see. Thank me afterwards. Let's see how it goes, and then we'll worry about whether it was worth the trip or not.
Go ahead and start it.
I can go ahead and start it. Hi, everybody.
Oh, 1 sec.
Oh, I have to wait a second. Sorry. Bye, everybody.
Okay, we're good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. This is fantastic. I feel like a real teacher right now. That's super cool. If anybody has trouble hearing me at any point, just point a finger in the air. I will be more than happy to speak up as much as I can. They have microphones on me. I really outdid myself on the microphones for this, so we'll see how this goes. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Michael Fienen. I am a jack of many trades, a hat of many wearers. If you want to find me anywhere, just look for @Fienen. That's me most of the places. Fienen, I think, on Instagram. If you want to know what I do, you can check me out. I'm out there at a table for New Cloud. I promise you this is not a sales pitch. We make interactive maps. That's really all I'm going to say about that right now. I'm also the senior developer at a company called Aquint. We are an international digital staffing firm. We find people like you and me jobs, basically. And I'm also the host and founder of the Drunken UX podcast, which I am going to be talking about, because it's part of the reason why this talk even exists. If you haven't listened to our show, I certainly encourage you to do so. I do have some little things up here. I've got some stickers and some coasters because Drunken UX. But you're welcome to come down and grab some of that. I've got cards up here too if you want to get in touch with me. I have them out there as well. But that's all the things. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what pedigree does that give you to come in here and talk to us about higher education? And let me tell you something. I'm from just down the road here. I'm out of Pittsburgh, Kansas. It's about an hour and a half to the west of here, if you aren't familiar. And I was at Pittsburgh State University for 6 years as the director of web marketing. That title means nothing. It basically meant I did all the things. I saw us through a website redesign and CMS deployment. I did accessibility, I did analytics, I set up our very first social media accounts, I wrote content, I designed, I did all the things, and I did most of them not great. But I learned a lot, and that's really the important part. And so I'm here to talk to you about what I've learned. Now, I do want to talk about the Drunken UX podcast, because like I said, that's why this talk exists. The Drunken UX podcast launched in January of 2018. We're halfway through season 2, and it's going very well. Thank you for asking. When we launched, I brought in a co-host, Aaron Hill. He came in and we sat down and we started doing pre-production. And we lined up several shows, we got things recorded ahead of time, and one of the things that we both agreed on early on was that transcripts were very important to us as part of the podcast. Because if you go through and how many people here listen to podcasts, out of curiosity? Yeah, good folks, I like all of you. How many of you here are in some way responsible for the creation of audio content or management of it at your university? A couple of you, great. So here's the thing. We sat down and we said, look at all these podcasts. None of them have transcripts. They are few and far between, and the ones who are doing it well are very well established, places like NPR. Folks who have a lot of money behind that development cycle and have already had the production facilities for it. And so we were looking at how we could do it and fill that void with our show. Now I'm going to warn you right now, this talk is a do as I say, not as I do, because spoiler alert, we suck at it. But we're trying, and we're getting better. In fact, if you go look at the website, don't do it right now, maybe do it right now, I don't care. If you look at our first 7 or so episodes, our transcripts are actually fantastic. They are, I think, the embodiment of exactly what we were after when we started doing our transcripts. They have links, they're clever, they're well edited, they are all those things. And then they stopped being those things because things caught up to us. And there are some challenges when it comes to building transcripts, and I'm well aware of those. And I think most of you are in here because you understand that it's hard to make transcripts. This is a challenge that is not unique to higher education and exists everywhere. Because the reality is, when we had a bunch of shows pre-recorded to launch the podcast, it was very easy for us to line everything up and get it started right away. But after life caught up to us, Aaron has kids. I have obligations with boards that I'm on. I have 2 jobs. Aaron has a full-time job. we suddenly got slapped in the face by reality that committing the hours upon hours for every show to get them transcribed was not sustainable for us. And that sucks. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that by the end of this talk you're going to walk out of here with the silver bullet, because you won't. There are two immutable facts, and that's that transcripts take a combination of time and money, and you have to figure out how to balance those. What I do hope I can do for you is give you that balance and help you understand how to find it in your own environments. So I want to start at the beginning here, because this is a basic thing, but I do find myself talking to folks about it a lot, and that's that transcripts and captions are not the same thing. They are very closely related. They serve a very similar purpose, but they aren't the same. First off, transcripts really don't have a format. There's an article, I've got a link to it later in the slides, and these slides will of course be available as well, from the W3 talking about how to achieve WCAG compliance with transcripts. And they have an example. That example is a lot of P tags, whole lot of paragraphs. Occasionally use a strong element to wrap a name. That's it. It's all the formatting that is recommended by W3. There isn't anything you can go to say, how do I do a transcript right? That resource does not exist. Trust me, I've looked. But as a consequence, it makes them very easy to do. The barrier to entry is really low with creating a transcript because all you need are ears and fingers. As long as you can hear what's being said and you can type it out, you can make a transcript. That makes it very easy for you to find people to do it, as it turns out, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. The other big difference is that transcripts, the first-class consumer of a transcript is your website visitor. The person who visits your site for that content is going to consume your transcript as you wrote it. For a caption, captions are slightly different. There are formats for captions. Is anybody familiar with SRT files? Is that something, if I say that, people are familiar with SRT files? If you aren't, go to YouTube and go to a video that you've uploaded and go into your the studio. You can download the automated caption file that they generate, and you'll be able to get that in SRT format. I'm going to show you examples of this, by the way, so don't let my words try to paint a picture because I suck at painting. SRT files do have a format, though, that you have to follow, and it's very specific. It's not hard. It's just a format that has to be maintained. That's important. The problem with that is it does make it logistically more difficult to create them. You have to know what's going on. You have to cut things up into much smaller chunks. Transcripts can be very long form. Captions, not so much. Captions, you have a maximum length of about 12 words, give or take, depending on the words. 2 lines of 6 words. And you have to time code them all. And time coding is labor intensive. Time coding isn't just hours, minutes, seconds. It's hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. And so you have to be following along. That takes a lot of time to get done. The other part of this is that the website visitor is not the first-class consumer of a caption. The software is. Captions are written for systems. Captions are written for software. The software then interprets the captions and displays it in a time-rolling format. So to give you an example, this is an episode of Planet Money. I love this screen, by the way. This thing's massive. I was really worried that some of my screenshots might be hard to read, but I'm not so worried about that now. This is an episode of Planet Money from NPR. It's a header, a footer, and a giant wall of text. It's exactly what a transcript for an hour-long show should be. I guess Planet Money's, 22 minutes. If you do a view source on this, what you're going to see is this. P tags. Paragraph, 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 paragraph. Very simple, very easy. It really shows how quickly you can make this if you can just type out all of that stuff. There's nothing else to worry about. For a caption, that's Neo. I use the Matrix. It's a little washed out. I apologize. Captions, on the other hand, are not persistent. Yes, right there. I have magical abilities to make that happen. For a caption file, because it's a temporal event, it's constantly moving, constantly rolling. If I show you this SRT file, it's very easy to understand. You can read this file, but you can also see how the time coding comes into play. Imagine trying to transcribe Forrest Gump this way. How many hours that would take? And I'm going to talk about the time component of this in a minute. I do want to mention one third way this can happen. And I'm only going to mention it for completeness, but I want you to know that it exists. and that's interactive transcripts. Interactive transcripts take the best of both worlds and smash them together in this beautiful sort of dance when it's executed well. If anybody has an LMS system, some LMS platforms do this. That's what this is out of. This is from Manning Publications on one of their courses on CSS and JS. You get a video on the left and a transcript on the right. The transcript is great. They spend a lot of time making them. They're marked up. You can see how their code examples are all marked up with code elements so they stand out. And it follows along the way a caption would. That blue highlighted section is following along in the video. This is technically a very high bar to achieve, though, and I don't expect most people to pursue that. But I wanted you to know that it does exist if you want to set goals. Okay, I'm talking very quickly, and I apologize. There's a lot to get through because I want to talk next about how hard this is, because I have to tear you down before I build you up, right? We all, I think, understand. Has anybody ever priced getting transcripts done? I see a couple heads nodding, a couple hands going up. Yeah. It's expensive, right? If you want good human transcription, it's $1 a minute, give or take. You can get 80 cents a minute, $1.20 on the high end. If you're doing English, if you're doing foreign language transcription, price goes up. This is something that adds up incredibly. Folks, you're at universities. If you're transcribing a lecture for a course, a 3-credit-hour course, over 15 weeks, that amounts to 2,700 minutes of audio to transcribe. 2,700 minutes, I haven't taken a math course in a long time, so stop me if I'm getting this wrong, but at $1 a minute and 2,700 minutes, I'm pretty sure that bill comes out to about $2,700 for one course. One course on your entire campus. Now multiply that, all the courses, or all of them that you're trying to get transcriptions for. Add in your special events, add in your guest speakers, add in your marketing and promotional materials that you're producing. Imagine how this adds up on a big campus especially. You're going to very quickly approach a 6-figure bill to get that done. At $1 a minute, I'm going to discourage everybody here that you're in the wrong business, because at $1 a minute for transcription, that works out to $124,000 a year salary. I don't know about you, I don't make that. So I may, especially once I retire, that might be a good way to kick it through retirement a little bit to make some of that money. It's expensive to do it, and there's no way around that if you have to farm it out. That's tough. The other side of this is that it's inaccurate to go otherwise. There are cheaper solutions. So I've included one of them here, 10 cents a minute. You get what you pay for. 10 cents a minute is not a human looking at your audio file. It's not a human listening to it. It's a machine. It's using natural language processing to speed through it and figure out what is being said. Now, I love this because they say, and I know it's hard to see, it says 80 to 95% accuracy. No, it isn't. I have used virtually every machine transcription service available. Trent, Temi, Rev, Amazon Transcribe, Scribby. None of them, for me anyway, have ever gotten to quite 80% accuracy. You may do better. But that's been my experience in that way. So you're getting what you pay for when you go to that cheap route. Now, the other side of this is I care about my audio. I care about my audio a lot. When I produce the podcast, the way we sound is very important. I'm recording in a controlled environment with a high-end microphone, and I make sure that it sounds right. And it still doesn't get to quite 80% accuracy. So imagine somebody in a lecture room just like this. A professor with a hanging microphone, with people using paper, people whispering in the background. All that little bit of interference. Now imagine maybe they have a speech impediment or an accent. That all affects machine transcription. And so that accuracy continues to go down as you progressively add in these failure points. The irony is machine transcription does work fairly well for short form content. When you're using short sentences, the natural language processing is good at compartmentalizing those sentences. But when you're talking the way I am right now, long form, paragraph-based, run-on sentences where the punctuation isn't real clear sometimes, that's where machine transcription tends to fall apart. Don't throw it out with the bathwater. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. Machine transcription does absolutely have a place. But the other part of this problem is the time component. Here's what I've learned. In machine transcription, I can basically take a machine transcript and edit it to accuracy at roughly 3 times the rate of the audio file. So if I have a 1-hour episode of my podcast, I can usually get it transcribed in about 3 hours on top of that. It's not bad, but again, like money, that time, those hours really add up. That's problematic for me. And so some people think, well, I'll just do it myself. That's what I'll do. I'll go through and I'll do it myself, and I can do it very quickly. And you realize very quickly that's not true. If you try to write your own transcript, it takes me roughly twice as long. You're going to be looking at 5 to 6 hours for every 1 hour of audio. You may ask, well, aren't there people who can do it quicker than that? And there absolutely are, and they will charge you $1 per minute. That's how they get away with that. Because I'm a fast typer. I've been typing for a lot of years, as it turns out. I'm really good at it, but it does take a lot of time. To put this into context, that 3-hour credit course that I mentioned a couple slides ago, that's 120 hours of editing to get those transcripts done. That's 3 weeks dedicated from one person to get a transcript for an entire class finished. Doesn't scale very well. And unfortunately, this balance of the time and money is something that you rob one to pay the other, no matter how you go about it. So I want you to understand, first and foremost, this is not a problem unique to higher education. It is not a problem that is unique anywhere. Does anybody listen to the Joe Rogan podcast? Don't worry, I wouldn't admit it either. Joe Rogan's podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, is possibly the most popular podcast on the internet right now. They have approximately 11 million listeners. This is a screenshot from one of their latest episodes on their website. Now, my joke is to challenge you to go to their website and find the link to the transcript, but I won't waste your time. There isn't one. 11 million listeners, sponsors, advertising, no transcripts. The irony and the thing I hate about it, actually, is that there is a fan site that does transcriptions for them, and I feel like it's rewarding them for bad behavior, quite frankly. They don't do it. If he can't do it, what chance do we have? Does that sound dark? That sounds a little dark, doesn't it? So let me go here. 99% Invisible. Anybody listen to 99% Invisible? It's a Radiotopia podcast. Fantastic design podcast for anybody who's into this subject. Radiotopia is one of the bigger podcast producers in the nation. Again, they have money behind them. I was confused when I was looking at 99% Invisible because I had found transcripts for their shows in the past. And I was looking at some others and I couldn't find their transcripts, the URLs, because they used just a /transcript on the end of their URL. And I was going to some of them and I wasn't getting it. This confused me, so I started going through their archives, and what I discovered was, back in February, you'll notice they have a transcript link. It's just an icon. By the way, don't do just an icon. That is not accessible. It doesn't have a focus state. It doesn't read in a screen reader. Don't do that. But everything after that has transcripts. Nothing after does. They're 4 months behind in getting their transcripts done. No machine transcripts, nothing. If you go to an episode after that date, I took that screenshot 2 nights ago. That's current as of right now. Shop Talk. Shop Talk familiar with anybody? This is Chris Coyer's podcast. I love Chris Coyer. Brilliant guy. He runs CSS Tricks. He's the guy who developed CodePen, if that's familiar to anybody. If you go look for transcripts for the Shop Talk podcast, though, this is what you're greeted with. And it breaks my heart. Because they're basically saying, yeah, we know, we can't get to it. We don't have a means. If you want to send us $100 for an episode, we'll get it done. I hate it. And the thing is, remember what I said at the start. I said Aaron and I were committed. We wanted to make transcripts for our podcast because we knew this. Because this isn't just Shop Talk. Go look at Syntax. Go look at Developer T. None of them. These are people in the web development industry that understand the importance of accessibility in our field, and they aren't getting transcripts done. You have to. Higher ed doesn't have a choice in this matter because getting transcripts produced for audio presentations isn't AAA compliance. It's not AA compliance. Single A. Transcripts are required for single A compliance with WCAG 2.1 and 2.0 for that matter. So we have to find a way through this. And the problem is the way we've justified it. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, and I will argue with anybody who wants to come down here after the fact with me on this. First and foremost, what I want to do is help you make this case. I want you to go back to your universities and take these arguments back, and I want you to get money or get time. Step one, I do not ever want to hear anybody in this room ever use the def as justification for creating a transcript because it is the wrong tactic and it isolates the problem into a silo that mitigates it. Transcripts are about so much more than just the deaf community. It's not about, oh, people who can't hear my podcast. And let me tell you, I've had these conversations. I was on Reddit in one of my podcast communities, and I posted this question. I said, why aren't you getting transcripts out? What's the holdup? And of course, time was a big one. Money was a big one. And then person after person after person. We don't have deaf listeners. Then what am I doing? What's the point? We have to get out of that cycle. Because listen, there are extremely good reasons why you should have transcripts that go so far beyond that, but hit accessibility at every level. First and foremost, who here is on a campus? And I know I'm shooting in the dark on this one. Who here has international exchange students on their campus? Everybody's got international populations in their campus groups. And let me tell you, one of my favorite quotes, movie quotes, is Bruce Willis, Die Hard. I only speak 2 languages, right? English and bad English. That's me. I tried learning Spanish at one point. I installed Duolingo on my tablet. I put up with that damn owl nagging me night after night to get my Spanish lessons done. I suck at it. I can read it okay, though. I can pick up words. I do have a vocabulary of Spanish in my head. I just can't speak it. And I can pick out words if I listen, but if I can see the words, I can actually get the meaning out of it. Same way with Latin. I was a Latin student in high school. I studied for 3 years. I know, I'm weird. I can read Latin fine, but put me in a movie where somebody is speaking it like in a Greek or Roman venue. I can't pick up what they're laying down. Having that transcript gives people something to anchor to. Because the reality is, when we talk, we use colloquialisms. We do things, we say words. The way we put words together is very strange sometimes. And when you can see them in context statically in a transcript, it provides meaning for those people and helps them understand the message that you're trying to get across. That's incredibly important. Not only that, who here works in an office where they have to deal with people? I'm just throwing that out there, you know. I've worked in cubicle farms before. I've worked in offices where I've had a door. It didn't matter. I always wore cans, headphones. I was always listening to something, listening to music, whatever, because I needed to tune stuff out. I was not in an environment where I could usually just turn on YouTube or turn on a Facebook video or turn on a podcast and listen to it at the volume comfortable for me. Why? Because it would disturb people, of course. Anybody who has worked in those environments knows that if you've got something with audio that has information that you need, podcasts are a big one for me. I listen to all the web development podcasts, and they will talk about something I need to know about. And if they don't have a transcript, I either have to wait to get that information or not get it. That's a crappy solution. If I had a transcript, I could jump right to the bit of information I needed, or at the very least, know when it is. Is it 5 minutes in, or is it 30 minutes in? If I told you episode 37 of the Drunken UX podcast, this is not a commercial, but it's kind of a commercial, just released on Monday. Rachel Cherry, who's running around here somewhere, sat down with us. We talked about Gutenberg accessibility and the audit that WP Campus brought in. Wouldn't you love to know if it started 5 minutes into the episode or if we, chatted for 15? Transcripts help people understand that. There's another part of this that's actually kind of interesting. People don't learn well orally. Not orally, orally. Some people, not all people, but some people don't learn well by listening. There are folks, and I'm watching, I'm looking around, I'm seeing people on computers, I'm seeing people writing stuff down. You're taking notes. Why? To remember it, to keep things. I'm putting words up on the screen with the explicit reinforcement. You're hearing my voice and you're seeing the words up there so that you've got 2 different senses reinforcing the information that I'm trying to give you. That's because we don't learn well in those modes, and listening to something and not having another way to get information out of it is a crappy way to teach people and to convey information. This also is something that when you are in an area of higher education and you're needing to convey information, citations and linking are so important to creating authority in the content that you have. When we produce an episode of the Drunken UX podcast, we produce 2 to 4 pages worth of show notes. We're researching the topic, we're pulling quotes, we're pulling statistics, and I'll throw them out very quickly in the show. 43% of the community does this, or I'll read off a quote from Bill Gates, whatever. But I'm not going to give you the full citation in the conversation because it's weird. It breaks up funny. But with a transcript, with a well-formed transcript, I can include all of that information and build the authority. And so if somebody is coming to my content and then needs to cite it themselves, they know where my information came from. They know I'm not making it up on the spot. Can't link audio yet. Give Google time. Speaking of Google, SEO is a thing. That exists. I mean, I don't know if anybody's heard of it or not, but having search engines able to index your content is incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. I want to talk real quick because there's this thing, right? I was a debater in high school. And one of the things that we were taught is when you were in that last argument and you've got that judge right in front of you and you're trying to win that round, you don't ask them to vote for you. You tell them to vote for you and you tell them why. That's how you need to treat SEO. Don't let Google decide for you how they're going to index your content or what's of value in your content. Give them a transcript so they know it on their own. This American Life is a podcast produced by NPR. It's been ongoing for years. And when I say years, I want to say they started like 1998. It's been going on a long, long time. And a few years back, they wanted to put out transcripts. This is super cool because the people who were doing this were incredibly smart, and they did the thing that I wish more people did, which is they checked their metrics before they did that, and then they checked them after. You know what happens when you measure something before a change and measure something after a change? You know if the change worked. It's magic. Google Analytics is such a weird thing that can give us all this information. What they discovered is fantastic. Did you know that by putting transcripts on their website, they increased the amount of unique traffic they had on their site by over 4%, 4.39%. They increased the number of inbound links to their site by 3.89%. Inbound links, remember what I said about citations, about authority. Inbound links are authority to everybody outside your organization. Not only that, organic search traffic, just organic search traffic increased by 6.68% by releasing transcripts. Why? Because that's what Google does. Back in 2010, Christina Halverson put out a book called Content Strategy for the Web. And it got us on this kick. Content is king. Christina did not come up with this idea. I'm not even sure Bill Gates did. But Bill Gates wrote an essay back in 1996, literally called Content is King. I love this slide because it lets me juxtapose Bill Gates with Google. That's the only reason I did it this way. On the left is an image, or not an image, a video result. What did I put in? How to make a campfire. You search for how to make a campfire, you get a video result back. That's not weird, right? You get video results all the time when you do searches. What's interesting about this is the blue bar. And this is something new. It started about 3 or 4 months ago, I believe. If you notice, it says suggested clip, 117 seconds. And it shows you right where it starts. They aren't just giving you the video because they read the title and description and think it's valuable to you. As I drop my microphone, I swear I'm putting it back. Look, hello. They know exactly where to put you inside that video. How could they possibly know that? Because they have spent far more money than you or I on SEO. And they're generating captions. You think it's a coincidence that YouTube started suggesting automated captions for videos about the same time that Google Voice started giving you speech-to-text for voicemail? Because it's not. You think it's weird that reCAPTCHA is using images from street-related activities roughly around the time we're testing AI-driven cars? It's not a coincidence either. Google is figuring out where to put you in video content because they've figured out text indexing. They know how to index text inside and out. Video and audio is the next frontier for them. Knowing how to give you the right multimedia content when you need it is going to be the thing that makes or breaks them for the next 10 years. Where this got interesting for podcasts is on the right panel. So if you search for the Drunken UX podcast, you'll see podcasts now show up in search results in line where you can listen to them. And at Google I/O, they were talking about this this year. What we're all waiting for as podcasters is we expect this exact same technology to apply to our audio, so that in the future, if somebody searches for something, they can pull that value out of our audio files the same way that they pull it out of text now. And that's coming to higher ed. It will happen. And it's something that you want control over. Don't let Google generate those transcripts automatically. They won't have links in them. They won't have citations. They won't have value to them that you can add. So I promised you that we were going to get somewhere with this that can help you. And so that's what I'm going to try to do right now. I've got a few suggestions. I hope they'll be helpful. If they aren't, well, let me know. I'll see if I can do better. First off, let's talk about getting people to do this work for you. Yes, you can hire it out. Yes, you can pay $1 a minute and get it done. That's not exactly efficient, though. I know most of you can't go and ask for another full-time employee. You probably can't go get a part-time employee. You know what else sucks? Open-ended contracts with vendors. I'm a big fan of student labor. There are always students looking for jobs. And remember, I started this whole thing out in the transcript when we were talking about transcripts. They're easy to do. There's a low barrier to entry. If you can get a couple students working on this, they can swap in and out of it very easily because there's not a high barrier of entry. There's not a lot of technical pieces of this that go together that they have to know. They're very cheap to hire that way. You can get a staple of them. It's your best route into it, at least. And it's a way to get started. The other side of this is, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I don't know. There's a grant. It's called the Technology and Media Services for Individuals with Disabilities Grant. It's grant number 84237. I have been trying to figure out if this grant is still available, and I don't know if it is. So I apologize if you go looking for it and it's not, but I'm sure we can find one as a collective that is, because there are grants available for helping with multimedia accessibility. This just happened to be one of the bigger ones up until at least recently, and then it appears to have just kind of gone away. So I don't know if it's still on the books or not, but feel free to look that up, and there's a link on this slide that will take you to a page about that grant. The next thing is you have to approach transcripts the same way you approach anything, and that's strategically. You can't just decide to make transcripts. It's not going to work that way. You need a process to it. I mentioned machine transcripts are a good starting place. This tool on the right or left here, right, left, who cares? Left is a tool called Otter. And I am not paid to speak for them. I don't even give them money myself. It's a free tool. And it's one of the best machine transcription tools I have found so far. It does speaker detection. It lets you download in different formats, from text to SRT files to PDFs. Don't download PDFs. And it lets you edit in space. It has turned out to be a great resource for us to start with. And it's a good way to get the ball rolling. Find out which one of these tools can help get you going. There's a quote from Nicholas Steenhout. He runs a website called podcast-accessibility.com. And he says on that you're better to have a transcript that's 80% accurate than none at all. And it's really true. There's a lot of value in getting anything out there rather than nothing. You don't want a page up there like what Shop Talk has, where it just says we don't have transcripts. You can offer something, and this tool is free. Not great. But when you think about it, anybody seen those images? They circulate on Facebook from time to time. It's a paragraph of text. And all the letters and the words are jumbled, but you still can read the words because your brain naturally corrects a lot of mistakes that it sees when you're scanning through content. That's one reason why you can get away with slightly inaccurate transcripts, because from a scanning context, our brains are capable of sorting that stuff out. So it's still a good starting place in that way. If you do that, the one thing I will say is make sure you put a disclaimer before the content, not after. Make sure you say, this is a machine transcript. It may have inaccuracies, or if it is a machine transcript and you haven't edited it, it will have inaccuracies. It at least prepares the person to know that what they're going to get may not be perfect. I want to refer back to This American Life because they actually have one of the best disclaimers I've seen. And I'm going to lift a little bit of their language. We use one, but I like theirs way better. I'll read this out for folks who can't see it. This American Life is produced for the ear and designed to be heard. If you are able, we strongly encourage you to listen to the audio, which includes emotion and emphasis that's not on the page. Transcripts are generated using a combination of speech recognition software and human transcribers and may contain errors. Please check the corresponding audio before quoting in print. Beautiful. It tells you everything that you need to expect. You know there may be errors. You know you should double check things before you use it. It checks every box. Speaking of This American Life, I want to go back a second. Remember, I had said earlier, people don't learn well orally. They don't pick stuff up if they're not writing it down or if they don't see it. Does anybody remember how much inbound traffic increased for This American Life after they produced their transcripts? Remember what that number was? Is that what I said? It's not. I intentionally didn't put those numbers up there for that exact reason. We hear things. I threw out 3 numbers very quickly. It was 3.89%. Little differences and little things, when we hear them and we don't get reinforcement, it changes the way we perceive them. The other side of this is to come up with a format that works for you. I mentioned early on that, for the most part, transcripts don't have a format. There is not a lot of guidance in this area, but that doesn't mean you can't come up with something. Produce a format that works for you and your organization and your tools. Write it down, codify it, and use it as something to anchor this process to, so that when somebody needs a transcript made, you know what it should look like. It doesn't have to be complex. So in this case, what you see on the left here is an example of one of our transcripts. We tried to make it look nice. We liked this chat exchange. It let the flow of the conversation visually stand out. You can tell who is speaking when. This is just HTML though, and it's literally nothing more than a div and a p tag. And it's so easy that what I do is I just pull my machine transcript. I do about 1.5 minutes worth of find and replace, most of that time just spent swapping out Aaron's name for mine, and I produce this and load it into the CMS. There's nothing else to it. Here's the thing, like all of this presentation, everything from our avatars to the fancy little bubble, whatever the little pointy thing is called. I'm not a designer, so I don't know. That, if you turn off CSS, this is all it looks like. Still readable, still perfectly scannable, paragraphs of text. The purest form of communication we have for text. And it doesn't take anything but a little extra CSS and markup. Also, I haven't mentioned this, and I didn't have a good place to throw it in, so I made a note here. If you do prepared content and you write scripts for that, you already have a transcript. Don't throw away your scripts. I was talking to somebody back in November of last year, and they were doing a scripted segment for some commercials. And they were asking, what tools I would recommend to transcribe. And I said, well, you're making a commercial. You're not improvising, right? They're like, no, you have a script, yeah? You have a transcript. And the moment that light bulb went off was just absolutely beautiful, because they just hadn't connected, because somebody else wrote the script. They didn't write the script, they just got the file. And they hadn't thought, I should just go ask for that script. If you need a little bit more structure, and this is where I ran into a lot of trouble, because I wanted a solution. I wanted to know what is the right way to make my transcript, and I couldn't find it. And that frustration actually set me back, because I spent more time looking than just doing. But I do have a recommendation, and it comes from a weird place. I'm a playwright in some of my spare time, which is, I know, a weird combination with web development, but hey, we do what we do. I use a system called Fountain. Fountain is nothing more than Markdown. It's just a specifically ordered type of Markdown. If you aren't familiar with Markdown files, Markdown is what Wikipedia uses to write its articles. If you use GitHub, it's what's in README files most of the time. All it is, I've converted part of our transcript to Fountain, and you'll notice there's literally nothing to it. It's just text with a name in all caps. An all caps line indicates a character name. Fountain Markdown is designed for script writing and screenplays and teleplays. So it has built-in support for things like character names, dialogue, actions and parentheticals, everything you need to write a transcript. And so if you need to display that on a web page then, all you need is, if you're using WordPress, there are tools that can convert Markdown to HTML, and you're done. Good to go. The super cool thing about this is people know Markdown. So if you take all these Markdown files for your transcripts, toss them in GitHub, you can create a way for people to submit corrections for you or improvements. They don't have to know anything about your internal vocabulary for the format you use, because it's Markdown. And everybody knows Markdown who uses Markdown. Okay, I'm doing good. I didn't start my stopwatch, but I'm seeing about 5 minutes left up there, so I think I am landing this bird roughly correct here. Here's the thing. Like anything, this first line, success comes from strategy. That's true for transcripts, it's true for marketing, it's true for anything. You can't just expect solutions to come. So if you have a strategy, if you put something together, you can get success out of it. Step 1, figure out how you want to do your transcripts. Don't labor over it. Come up with something simple, something that works for you. Run it through a screen reader, and then go. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be something that you spend hours working on. If nothing else, p tags and strong tags, good to go. Easy. Once you've got that format figured out, pick your tools. Does that mean machine transcription? Maybe. Maybe you sign up for a Temi account to get things started. Maybe you use Otter, whatever the case may be. Pick that tool. Pick your editors. Are you going to use Notepad? Are you going to use Atom? If you want to get into Fountain, there's a great editor I can recommend called CinemaVision that does Fountain Markdown just natively. It's beautiful. Welby is another one. Find those tools that will help you get that process done. Then, from that point, build the process around those. Plug the format into your tools. Determine where your audio comes from. Who's responsible for that? Who gets it to you? Then you put it into your machine transcription process. You get that file out in a certain format. That format is then carried over to whatever tools that you've picked. Somebody is responsible for editing that. Create a process, because at the end of the day, the